Creativity is often regarded as a vital part of marketing, particularly in the area where it's most widely cited, which is that of advertising. In fact, it's often put in the position of being the primary objective of any work and the main criterion on which it is judged. In fact, its role should be that of servant of marketing, but it often seems to be the master. This elevation seems to be a prime example of what's called consensual validation, where everyone agrees that something is true even when the evidence suggests otherwise. In ancient Rome, Cato observed that when Cicero spoke, people marvelled. When Caesar spoke, people marched. The elevation of creativity seems to be more in the realm of Cicero, whereas surely the task of marketing is to echo Caesar. There's much discussion on the effectiveness of creativity, but this is often in the form of retrofits, which were usually aided by pretty meretricious metrics conjured up to give validity to the points made, so constructing a sort of false reality. A familiar illusion is the quantification of emotions, which is kind of akin to trying to nail custard to the wall. In the IPA Effectiveness Awards, the most comprehensive and rigorous collection of marketing successes there is, the overwhelming majority of the cases which won were usually a pretty simple articulation of the strategy. It was only in a few of the cases that creativity in advertising actually transcended the strategic proposition. I mean, it has been said that creativity is something that I know it when I see it. And really there's no doubting the joy it can bring. But maybe this intellectual and emotional delight seduces us with regards to the validity of creativity and ascribes to it powers that stray far beyond this personal satisfaction. I mean, it can often become an end in itself. There's often no greater praise than that something is creative. This can result in a diversion from the central task of marketing, which is to resonate with the consumer, which is something that needs to draw on a kind of wider canvas. Creativity might be enlightened, but does it always shed light? In effect, it's not enough that consumers admire creative ingenuity. What is required is that their perceptions are changed or reinforced. Often the outcome of creativity is rightly lauded, but usually in its own right rather than in terms of the objectives marketing is required to serve. I mean, such a reaction is often similar to the way a movie is appreciated. But a film's success is judged by other criteria, that of critical acclaim and how many pay to view it, whereas the criteria for advertising are less immediate. When the creative process is initiated, it is not creativity which needs to be the point of departure. I mean, this would be difficult as no one has a clear idea, as there's no ready definition of it, but rather it is the consumer and the context of the brand, which is where the departure should start. I mean, frequently it's observed that advertising must be meaningful to the consumer, so it follows that this should be the focus for advertising. Putting creativity onto centre stage can detract from this. This is not to say that creativity cannot contribute to the effectiveness of advertising, but as a means to an end, not an end in itself. There is a familiar illusion that the public is judging work in terms of creative merit in a way that is analogous to the way those in advertising assess it. This seems unlikely, particularly as there's no acceptance of what creativity means. The object of advertising is not to have the consumer judge, but rather to accept. Instead of creativity, one could just as legitimately present insights in the sense described by Gary Klein, as seeing what others don't, as these can resonate but also have the added advantage of being clearly defined. There's also something which might be called cognitive endowment, whereby a proposition needs to be interpreted by the consumer. In effect, it's a sort of cognitively processed, and so becomes their own thought, thus achieving greater potency thanks to the power of the endowment effect. I mean, this is actually part of the enduring strength of parables. The other criteria included in judgment of creativity are often sophisticated and subtle, but remove focus from the central point of differentiation. Jack Daniels is one of the most successful and enduring of all advertising campaigns. Having started in 1954 and taken the brand to the position of the largest selling single whiskey brand in the world, from 500,000 cases a year to 12 million. It achieved this by a consistent focus on its point of differentiation, a place and its people. Despite its extraordinary success, this campaign has never won any awards for creativity, although it was named by David Ogilvy as among the half-dozen best campaigns in the history of advertising. As has been recognised, the siren call of and the challenge of creativity is all too tempting. But this shouldn't blind us to the ultimate and maybe more prosaic purpose of marketing, to achieve resonance with the consumer. Creativity is inspiring, joyful, and intellectually uplifting. That's why it's so seductive. But the primary objective of marketing is not personal indulgence, but rather to affect the perceptions of consumers. Thank you.